have maybe two other questions around this topic, but now if we come back to the educational part of it, is that I feel like, and it's a feeling from my side because I'm now into education. I'm writing stuff, but I don't feel that I'm a teacher. I'm just sharing thoughts and articles and stuff like that I find it's interesting, and most of the time I try to verify if it's reliable sources. But that's it. It goes rarely farther than that. I don't feel that I'm a teacher, but so my point is, it's a feeling that maybe the way we create knowledge in the design field, and specifically in UX field, but generally speaking in the design field, is problematic in a way that if we come back to the scientific part, there's levels of evidence, and we expect a good study to have at least a good level of evidence at the end, like more than just some people who said that it works for them, like a statistical study about something with numbers that can be replicated, stuff like that. This is science. In design, we are not working like that. Like, I read an article yesterday and I want to try it. It feels like it works for me, and that's enough. I feel like it's we are accepting level of evidence that are really, really low in a scale of good evidence. And this is part of the knowledge. And then from education, if you derive this behavior to the education parts, you see that some of the stuff we are teaching are not based on so much. Sometimes it's just empty behind. Like you gave the example of, yes, there's a study that shows that when people are facing a beautiful interface versus ugly interface, they assume that it's easier to use. But there's plenty of criticisms of this study, because this is just one study that exists, and we know that it's not enough, because it's spurious correlation between behaviors and stuff that we see. So it needs more research. And even given all the criticisms, we are still saying the stuff. And I saw, like, some time ago, Jad Spool saying something about this, specifically this issue, and the study about visual versus not visual stuff, and he get like a tweet storm, like by a lot of people who disagree with him, or just the fact that five people is enough to test. What? No, it's not enough to test. You cannot do one test with 5 people and say that's enough. I did my work. It works for them, so it will work for I don't know how hundreds of people, or
Yeah, there was a bunch of good stuff in there.
Sorry, it was dense, but
yeah, no, there's so first, I think user testing is a whole subject that I've interviewed lots of people, lots of designers applying for a job wherever I've been working, and I love asking people about how much user research they've done, like face-to-face testing, and really often the answer is, oh yeah, we did a couple of user tests where I worked at that place 3 years ago, and that's it. Like, that's the user testing they've done. And to me, that's a whole chunk of what we do they just have never tried. And so there's that. But the 5 users thing, I think then you get into like the statistics, I guess. So like what you said now, I totally agree with that. If you have made something and you need to test and see if it works, you can't put 5 people on that and say, "Yep, high five." Like I think you need to A/B test it or launch it and get some proper numbers if you want that kind of measurement. But then on the other side, you can do user testing in a more general way if you put 5 people through it and see what you discover from those 5 people. because if 2 or 3 of those people have the same problem, then it's probably a significant problem. But like that's a different. You're coming at the statistics the other way. So I think that's confusing.
And we are talking here about a process. Like
right.
you're in the process of testing something, and you want to figure out where are the significant problem, and then you apply this kind of logic where you want to iterate on what are the problem.
Yeah, right. So like your example with 5 users to prove that it works, that has to happen at the end. That's after you did all the work and we're trying to prove it. And my example of trying to find problems with 5 people happens at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It like sounds subtle, but big difference.
Yeah, true.
One is very useful and one is garbage. So I think like that stuff is good. Now I forget what your main point was, because
well, it was about how we create knowledge in our field.
Right.
Yeah.
I liked this actually a lot. I gave a talk that was a few years ago in 2015, I think. I gave a talk in Budapest called Design as a Science. And it was actually specifically about the scientific method and how it makes your UX better. Mm-hmm. But at the end of that talk, I sort of threw out this idea that the scientific community, because they all work like that, and let's ignore some of the stupid things that happen in science too, but in theory, that if everybody's using the scientific method and you have this sort of research, hypothesis, prediction, experiment, results thing, done properly, shared openly, in theory, then the whole community of scientists are all adding little pieces to what we know, and that collectively we start to get somewhere.
Yes.
UX could work like that. If everybody was doing it sort of the same way and then sharing the method and the results and the context of all the stuff, if you could just read lots and lots of material like that, I think UX would move forward much faster, and we would know a lot more. And all this.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just think that all of this information is just sort of sitting in companies everywhere, and a lot of it is just done badly. If you wanted to do that, so we can't use it all. But like, there's no way to do that, and it would be really great if we could.
Actually, you have journals and publications that exist for design, and specifically for usability and human factor research. So it exists, but it's for academic people. Yeah. And when you are a designer, maybe a beginner, or maybe even a senior, but you never went through this, academic world of the design and stuff like that, and you read that, you put it at the same level of evidence than your average medium article about design. It's like, for you, it's the same stuff. Well, one is a story and the other is a study, so maybe one is not easier to read. And when you see this kind of the methodologies that are used in academic fields, like fields all old, you have design sprints and you have usability testing with a statistical table and stuff like that. So you cannot compete. It's like
No, I would love if that was a more common thing. I think the academic industry barrier is a real thing. That's a big, like, just to learn. If a designer has to write a paper the way academics want a paper to be written, I think it's dead right there. Like, that's a whole, almost a language of its own to write a paper the way a sort of rigorous journal wants to do it. So if we're talking about that UX designer that did a 6-week boot camp and now they're at their company and we want them to like document their studies,
so yeah, probably we don't need the academic rigor to.
There's a happy middle there somewhere.
Yes.
And actually, maybe that's relevant to the awards topic.
Yeah.
Like awards might be the wrong way to recognize UX. What if you could have citations as a designer, so that you could? And what if stakeholder meetings were the literature? What if you could back it up with other studies and say, I found 3 or 4 things that were kind of similar to what we're doing. It's different in this one way. We're going to test that difference. That would be a whole different thing.
Yeah, and we try to, we get to a point where we change the meaning of stuff in our film. Like stakeholder meetings, like people are afraid, either afraid or they don't want too much to talk about it. Like it's either boring or it's difficult. So
I went to a party once when I worked for a pretty big startup, and they just by coincidence, one of the guys there was a cognitive scientist. So him and I found each other and started talking about what we do. And he was testing. So that company was it was like where you could post reviews about companies.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was there, I was doing a lot of research about ideas like what makes a review trustworthy.
Yeah.
So, related to that. Super interesting, actually. But and then I met this cognitive science guy, and he was studying. It wasn't quite the same, but sort of in the same neighborhood of beliefs and based on what you read. And so we were talking about things, and he was explaining a study he was doing, and he said it's a really huge study. We have 150 people coming in to do this in a lab environment, and et cetera, et cetera. And I said, I'm jealous of the control that you are that you have over designing your study. But at the same time, if I did something with 150 people at a startup, nobody would even have a meeting about it. We need to test like a few thousand people, just minimum.
Yeah.
But in real life, it tends to be 100,000 people A/B tested through a few different versions. And then he was jealous of that part. Mm-hmm. And we had this feeling, both of us, that what if you could put these together? If you could have the sort of the standards of science, but used with the access of business.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like.